We are currently in Shamsi-Din Shokin district in the east of Katlon region. The southern slope of the Davaz Ridge and its outbursts can boast of the highest Marco concentration. In the 90s of the last century, with only 150 remaining animals, the population of Bukhara Marcos was in really bad shape. It was almost impossible for conservation authorities to control the rugged terrain in remote mountainous areas. In 1992-1993, Tajikistan became the scene of the civil war, and thus Marcos were the last thing people were concerned about. Sporadic conflicts continued up until 1997. Only after peace and rule of law were restored, environmental agencies could resume their work. Today, the vast majority of Tajik society abides by the national environmental legislation, which is very important, as it's much easier to preserve nature not out of the fear of punishment, but based on personal commitment by the voice of one's heart. Dashti Jum State Nature Reserve covers the Kazrati Shok mountain range. There's another reserve on the Davaz Ridge. These specially protected areas were established in 1983 specifically to preserve Marcos and their key habitats. The reserve's area is about 20,000 hectares, which is clearly insufficient to preserve a genetically stable Marco population. It was necessary to create a system protecting hundreds of thousands of hectares of land, parts of the Marco's natural habitat. So in the early 2000s, the government of Tajikistan started assigning land to public and private hunting organizations, under the condition of local residents protecting their plots from poachers themselves and monitoring the overall condition of rare species habitats. It was not only about combating poaching, but also about preservation of plant communities forming the basis of Marco's nutrition. The president of Tajikistan personally paid great attention to this issue. We will take part in the expedition organized by the National Environmental Action Center of the Environment Protection Committee under the government of Tajikistan to try to understand what has happened to Marcos and argali over the past 15 years. Hisrav Shok Shermatov, head of the Expedition Center, is heading the mission. We are currently in the vicinity of Anchirob village.
Ежегодно специалистами Комитета охраны окружающей среды совместно с учеными специалистами.
Every year, jointly with the researchers of the National Academy of Sciences, the experts of the Environment Protection Committee conduct wild-hoofed animal counts in mountain ranges. Every year, we see an increase in their number. In particular, the Marco population has grown up to over 3,000 heads. That of Siberian ibex is now exceeding 40,000, and that of argali is currently more than 27,000 heads. The name Marco is derived from the Persian words mor, snake, and kur, horn, which is obviously associated with the spiral shape of the animal's horns. In Pakistan, they also call them snake eaters, as a legend says that Marcos eat snakes. In Afghanistan and Pakistan, there was even a common belief that Marcos meat could neutralize snake venom. By the way, Levantine viper and cobra do inhabit the Kazrati Shok Ridge, where we are now, but there were no scientifically reliable reports of Marcos eating snakes. In other words, it's probably just a legend. We set up the Saidi Tagnob hunting farm in 2014. In the first year of operation, we did a Marco count and were able to register only 12 heads. Now there are more than 400 of them. Scientists identify several markhor subspecies, out of which one lives on the territory of Tajikistan, Bukhara markhor. In Pakistan, Afghanistan, Kashmir and Little Tibet, there live other subspecies like Sulaiman, straight-horned, Kashmiri and other markhors. Their classification is still disputed by specialists from different countries. On the territory of the CIS, small quantities of Bukhara markhors are found on the Hisar Ridge in Uzbekistan and in the far east of Turkmenistan. In the past, the local Kishlak population would engage in illegal hunting. Thanks to our work with local communities, people have changed their attitude towards wildlife conservation. At the moment, there's practically no poaching in our area. Markhors usually inhabit rocky gorge slopes at the altitude of 500 to 3,500 meters above sea level. They feed on grass and leaves of trees and shrubs. With our own eyes, we saw how they would get up on their hind legs and eat the leaves of wild pistachio. The area of our hunting farm is 18,000 hectares. When we had just received this land under our control, the markhor stock was around 10 to 15 heads. Thanks to the support of the government and conservation agencies, we have enhanced our protection measures and are currently monitoring it 24/7. You can see markhors, red sheep, lynxes, bears, snow leopards and other animals in our hunting farm. In just an hour, you and I encountered more than 70 markhors. This fact suggests that the decisions on species protection do contribute to boosting their populations and improving the overall environmental situation in the area. Saidi Tagnab is a family business. The farm's director, Hakim John Abdullayev, represents the farm and official agencies, and his father, Odina Abdullayev, is responsible for communicating with the locals, which plays no small role in the overall farm's success. We are invited to the table. At lunch, we can calmly discuss the challenges, needs, and hopes of this family hunting farm. What's the name of this dish? This is a Tajik national dish called shakarob. They eat it with their hands like the Kazakhs eat beshbamak. Odina Abdullayev is a highly esteemed elder in Anchirob village. He's no millionaire, an ordinary farmer. But together with his sons, they did a lot of good for their native Kishlak. Thanks to hunting, we were able to allocate money to build the 5-kilometer-long water supply pipeline to the village, as well as upgraded the road to the village. We even bought an interactive board for the local school. For Nowruz, we buy uniforms and textbooks for our orphans. In mountain villages, not so much the official status of an inspector, but his standing in the community is important. The respect of fellow villagers can be earned only by good deeds. Yet, as another famous joke says, a good word and a cult together work better than a good word alone. At first, the Abdullayevs had to seek help from the law enforcement. At first, we had issues with poachers. We started reporting poaching cases to the law enforcement. They assisted us, and gradually poaching stopped altogether. When the interests of local residents are backed by the government's political will, the results come quickly indeed. Has the number of markhors grown during this time? Yes, very much. In 2009, for example, there were not more than 17 to 18 of them on each side of the ridge. Today there are over 800 of them. After lunch, we head to the mountains again to examine another plot. In the narrow valley at the junction of two ridges, there grazes a herd of boars. Their population in Tajikistan has always been rather big, as Tajiks don't eat them. Each year, the farm buys several markhor hunting licenses from the state. Each of them costs $30,000. 20% of this money goes to the local self-governance body, 35% to the local division of the Environment Protection Committee, and the remaining part goes to the state budget. All parties should be interested. On the international hunting market, one such license costs from $130,000 to $140,000. As a rule, it is difficult for a rural hunting provider to find a client capable of paying such money and settle all modalities. This is when specialized companies called outfitters come into play. For their services, finding a client at international hunting exhibitions and fulfilling travel agent functions, they take 10 to 40% of the total tour cost. The license states that the hunter has the right to kill one old male animal out of reproductive age. It's extremely important to comply with this rule, otherwise trophy hunting can turn into a factor of negative selection. Experienced guides should be able to determine animals' age. It is not that difficult. The age of a fallen beast is visible on the annual rings of its horns. Markhors are amazing rock climbers, as they can move on almost sheer cliffs, which they do extremely fast, so it's very difficult to sneak up on them. You just start approaching, and in no time they move 1 kilometer away from you. Not to scare the animals, we film them using our drone. Still, the unusual buzzing in the air makes markhors hide in juniper thickets.
In
the course of our counting mission around the monitoring territory of Kimanjor village belonging to the Mukofis hunting farm, we were able to register more than 80 markhors. Most of them are trophy animals. We have also monitored the territory of the Saidi Tagnob farm and saw many large markhor herds there too, with multiple trophy animals. We are saying goodbye to the hospitable Abdullayev family and heading to the Pamir Mountains. Our next destination is the town of Karak. The Tajik-Afghan border follows the Panj River. The road gradually ascends and gets steeper every minute. Behind the river is the Afghan province of Badakhshan with its capital, the town of Faizabad. Further to the east of the main part of Badakhshan, there extends the long and narrow Vakhan corridor. The province is mainly inhabited by Dari-speaking Tajiks. Other communities speaking the languages of the Pamir group also live here. During the Afghan war, the province was controlled by the famous Ahmad Shah Massoud, the only field commander who went to a truce with the Soviet forces in 1982. He was an ethnic Tajik. On occasion, the truce would get violated, but overall in Badakhshan, the fighting was not as intense as in southern Afghanistan. After the Taliban overtook power in Afghanistan in 1996, Ahmad Shah Massoud entered the Northern Alliance, fighting against the Taliban. Thanks to this circumstance, at the height of the war between the Taliban and the Northern Alliance, the situation on the Tajik-Afghan border was relatively calm. Except for scattered incidents, had it not been for Ahmad Shah, things could have been much worse. On the Afghan side of the Panj River, there stretches a handmade stone-paved road where two cars can barely pass by each other. People move around mainly on animal-drawn transport. On the Tajik side, the Pamir tract along the Panj is the main and only highway, as well as a popular tourist attraction in its own right. Using the road requires getting a special pass to enter the border zone. Afghan villages are quite close, but they warned us that Afghans don't like tourists directing cameras at them. Still, most travelers don't miss the opportunity to discreetly, using their cell phones, take a couple of pictures of Afghanistan. Made of clay and stone, the Afghan houses cover mountain slopes like honeycombs. The river valley is covered with land, farmer plots and gardens, neatly fenced off with stone walls. In his book on the diversity of the world, Marco Polo described this part of the Great Silk Way passing through the Badakhshan Mountains in the following way. In leaving Badakhshan, you ride 12 days between east and northeast, ascending a river that runs through land containing a good many of towns and villages. The people are brave. 12 days later, you arrive in another area, not very large, 3 days' way in any direction. It is called Vakan. Then you go northeast into the mountains and reach, as they say, the highest place in the world. Marco Polo was the first to describe mountain goats, and the Pamir markhor subspecies now carries the name of the brave Venetian. Their horns are 6 palms long and shorter. The herders use these horns to make bowls, which they eat from. They also use them for making livestock fences. In this kingdom, there are numerous narrow, unassailable passages, and the locals are not afraid of enemy attacks. Cities and fortresses are located on top of high mountains and are unattackable. Local people are excellent archers and hunters, dress in animal skins to a large extent because fabrics are expensive, wrote Marco Polo. In the second half of the first millennium BC, Badakhshan region was historically inhabited by the tribes belonging to one of the Scythian Saka culture. The local toponym, Shugnan, is associated exactly with its name and literally means the Saka country. We are at one of the attractions of the Vakan corridor, the Kakaka Fortress. This fortress appears to have been built in ancient times. They laid bricks on top of the rock. The masonry consists of stones bound by a special kind of cement. Already in those days, local residents were capable of making cement. There are no written testimonials about the fortress that reached our time. Archaeologists, though, dated to the 2nd century BC. It was the time of turbulent historical events. Back then, in the Tarim Valley, there lived a nomadic tribal association of Joly. They are also called Eastern Sarmatians because of the similarity of their cultures. It appears they and the Saka were kindred tribes. In the 2nd century BC, several tribes, part of the Joly state, known to ancient authors under different names, like the Kushans, Hephthalites and Tocharians, moved to Mavarannar and Bactria. The nomads mixed in with the local farmer population relatively quickly and founded the Kushan Empire. The state language in the empire was Bactrian. 2 main religions were Greco-Buddhism and Zoroastrianism. It was under the Kushan rule that the development of the Great Silk Way peaked. Kakaka Fortress was probably built in the Kushan period to protect caravans traveling along the Vakan corridor from China to Afghanistan and India. The fortress is located on top of the mountain with a good view of both banks of the Panj River. This fortification consisted of 55 towers with an arrow shot. Down below you can see the turbulent Panj River. Now the water is low, but in summer it is almost impossible to cross it. Steep rocky cliffs around. And then at the very top there are walls with arrow loops through which fortress defenders fired their bows and poured boiling resin on attackers' heads. They might have used catapults as well to throw stones. Apparently this fortress remained unwinnable for centuries and protected caravans going along the Great Silk Way that went through this area. The fortress operated until the 7th century AD and was likely destroyed during the Arab conquest. We need to hurry to the town of Karak, the administrative center of Kukistani Badakhshan region. The expedition's schedule is tight. In Karak, we intend to visit 3 sites: the Pamir Biological Institute, High Mountain Botanical Gardens, and Regional Department of Environment Protection.
We
are now in the Pamir Botanical Gardens, one of the most highly elevated gardens in the world. Only in India there is another one located 20 meters higher. The garden's main purpose is preserving the endemic species of the Pamir high mountain plant communities, as well as investigating the possibility of introducing various plants of the world flora at such altitude. Dr. Abdunazarov devoted 30 years to studying the Pamir animal world, so our first question to him is about the Pamir's symbol, the snow leopard.
According
to official data, there are 320 snow leopards in Tajikistan now. Based on our own observations, in the course of the last 20-30 years, its population should have increased more significantly. For the last 2 years, we have been working on the Kushan Ridge between the Gund and Batang rivers. There we registered at least 25 to 30 animals. I would say that its largest population is in the eastern Pamir. Therefore, I think snow leopard population in Kukistani Badakhshan region should be around 500. You can even encounter them inside the town of Karak. A month ago, one of them got into an attic. They caught it and released back into the wild. I think Karak is the only town in the world where snow leopards live inside the city. We can go there now and maybe we'll get lucky to even see it in spyglass. To the traditional question about the main threat to the Pamir snow leopard population, Abdunazar Gaib Nazarovich replied the following. The main threat to the Pamir snow leopard, as anywhere in the world, is posed by humans. In recent years, though, the actions by the government, Environment Protection Committee, Tajikistan's hunter associations, made a great contribution to its preservation. Hunting farms are also making major gains in this direction. Pamir poplar, externally similar to common Lombardy poplar, is also an endemic species growing only in the Pamir. We are passing by 15 such good-lookers. This tight group of 15 poplars in the middle of the garden has a story to it. In 1989, Boris Yeltsin was resting under them. He was told that the poplars symbolized the 15 republics of the USSR. He commented that they were planted a little too close. They look cramped, he said. We are heading to Kukistani Badakhshan Regional Environment Protection Department. Hunting licenses are issued based on the enactment of the Republic of Tajikistan. Hunters come here from many parts of the world. The region gets 105 licenses. The money is mainly used to develop mountain communities and raise environmental awareness among the population. Likewise, this money is used to support poor communities, mainly for procuring coal for poor families at low price or even free of charge. On high-altitude plateaus, winter fat constitutes the basis of argali nutrition. In crisis time, people harvested winter fat as firewood, thus depriving argali of its main food. Hydropower development and preferential coal supplies have resolved this issue.
Было 7 случаев нападения снежного барса на частный скот.
There were 7 cases of snow leopards attacking domestic cattle. Thanks to the support of the mayor of Dushanbe, the damage was compensated to farmers. 3 out of these 7 animals were in poor condition, and we placed them in the rehabilitation center at the Bars hunting farm. 3 healthy ones were released back into the wild. We are leaving the town of Karak and are heading to the ultimate point of our expedition, the eastern Pamir. The road is getting steeper every minute. We are entering the snow belt. As we are rolling off the track, the mountain road becomes rough even for our specially prepared SUVs. Well, after midnight, we finally reach our shelter for tonight, the Murgab hunting farm. A rich, welcoming dinner and the long-awaited rest are awaiting us.
У меня выбор есть. Кофе.
I have a choice, coffee or green tea. Wise people told me that it's better to go for green tea at the altitude of 4,300 meters. Antobek Bekmurodov, hunting farm director, is telling us about his issues and achievements. Last year, we were able to register around 12,000 markhors. We also did animal sex desegregation. So what are the population dynamics? Back in 1995, Fedosenko, a famous and globally renowned Russian biologist, came here. We registered only 2,000 animals, females and young stock mostly. Similar to the actual quantity of the population, sex and age structure of the herd is an important factor characterizing the overall condition of hoofed animals' population. For a population to prosper, there must be enough adult reproductive males.
Сейчас численность домашнего скота увеличилась, а также численность нашего.
Now we see a significant increase of livestock. The number of our Pamir sheep has also grown several times. They are competing. We wrote a letter to our Academy of Sciences and talked to the head of our region. He said he would attend to this issue of overgrazing by domestic animals in summer. Recently, there has been an increasing number of cases of snow leopards entering settlements, animal sheds and killing livestock. I believe a healthy leopard will never approach humans. Only sick and old leopards do this because they cannot hunt down prey in the wild. I think that if a snow leopard came to humans and it was caught, it shouldn't be released back into the nature. It will either die there or will come back. So I think it's better to take it to a zoo or keep it in a special kennel. If it's old, it will be better off in a zoo.
Которые там держат его, или если он больной, его вылечат, если он старый, пускай он будет в зоопарке.
The morning greets us with fog and poor visibility. But gradually the fog dissipates and we make a reckless decision to go for the counting mission on our SUVs.
На нашей территории сегодня почти 200 тысяч гектаров.
Our subject area is about 200,000 hectares, and we have around 10 to 11,000 argali and 3 to 4,000 Siberian ibexes. This is the modern name for Pamir or Marco Polo sheep inhabiting it. I think it's the maximum that our land plot can feed. In the past, we mainly focused on conservation efforts. Today we are killing 3–4% of the total population, which is peanuts. In addition, hunters mostly kill old rams, which are almost not involved in mating.
Или практически не участвует во время гона.
In a couple of kilometers, we see that ascending the plateau on jeeps was a bad idea. The wind blows the snow off the hillocks, but it's still quite deep in ravines. We are forced to constantly dig ourselves out. The little Pamir is behind this mountain. I took a horse from their khan. Was he a poacher? Yes, he left his horse and ran away. We gave it to the law enforcement guys, but it died anyway. How could you dare taking the horse from the khan? He might have been a khan, but for me he was a poacher. Jibek told an interesting story of him taking a horse from a tribal khan who crossed the border. We are encountering argali herds at every step. In this time of the year, males keep to themselves, but there are also mixed groups. Monitoring is different from state animal counts in that the counts are carried out relatively simultaneously across the whole area, whereas the purpose of monitoring is to approximate the state of a population in a separate area. 8,000 animals encountered in one day cannot give an accurate number, but may clearly indicate that the population in a particular area is doing well.
Это место называется самое большое ущелье у нас на территории Ортобель.
We are now in the largest gorge in our area called Ортобель. You can see the Vakhan corridor from here, at the junction of 5 countries. To the left of us is China. Directly in front of us, Afghanistan. We are on the territory of Tajikistan. Do you see that faraway mountain? It's already Pakistan. The name of the mountain is Karak. You cannot see India from here, but it's not far away. 50 or 60 kilometers maybe. In such snow, SUVs will not get too far, so Jibek decides to return to the base and change transport. Niva Bigfoot and Oaz jeeps on big wheels are the best vehicles for the Pamir Plateau during this time of the year, aside from snowmobiles, of course. Our high cross-country performance vehicles allow climbing into snow-filled gorges and encountering argali herds of up to 100 heads and more. The argali mating season takes place in November. At this time, they gather into large mixed groups and break up again in February-March. Males go to their favorite places, females do the same. Yet every rule has an exception. Certain males, especially young, remain with females. If I had internet connection here, Google would tell me how yak domestication had happened. In any case, during the Silkway time, yaks were already used as draft animals because they could pass where other transportation means or even horses couldn't. This herd of yaks can be called semi-wild. They have an owner, but they graze on their own all year round. Nobody harvests any fodder for them. The bulls defend their herd from wolves themselves. In general, they can be considered real wild animals, only with a proprietor. It's for this reason that such manner of keeping cattle is called semi-free. By the way, adult bulls can weigh up to 1 ton. They say that personal space beyond which they will not let humans approach is 50-20 meters. Let's do an experiment. I will try coming up to this huge bull closer than 20 meters.
Этому большому быку на 20 метров.
The farm's territory is home to 4,000 ibexes. Tajik specialists want to classify Siberian mountain goats living in the Pamir mountains under a separate subspecies because it attracts clients and therefore is commercially profitable for the country. In the International Code of Zoological Nomenclature, the term subspecies refers to populations capable of crossbreeding which do not interbreed in nature due to geographical isolation. Pamir sheep are slightly different from these inhabiting the Tian Shan, so it does make sense to identify them as a separate subspecies. It's a controversial issue from the zoological point of view, but in case of positive decision, it will help hunting providers earn some additional money. Ibexes avoid plateaus and elevated plains and keep to rocky areas, good for hiding from predators. In the Pamir, except for humans, ibexes have only 2 natural enemies: snow leopards and wolves.
Какой урон может нанести один волк? Это еще представляете?
What damage can one wolf do? In the Soviet Union, our scientist, candidate of biological sciences Sapochnikov, had estimated that one wolf kills up to 25-30 argali a year.
5 до 30 архаров.
The facility is located close to a hot radon source. Firstly, it allows saving on heating. Secondly, it's so nice to take a hot radon bath upon returning from a tiring trip.
Сегодня мы целый день провели в горах. Там очень холодно, ветер.
Can you imagine? We spent the whole day in the mountains and it was very cold. Coming back to the base, we found out there's a radon spring here.
Сюрприз. Это радоновый источник.
Our dream came true. We saw the eastern Pamir. And now it's time for us to continue on our route. Many other beautiful and interesting locations are awaiting us.
Атабек, спасибо большое. Во-первых, за сервис. Это
Atobek, thank you very much. First of all, for great professional service. Top class for sure. But most importantly, thank you for preserving and protecting this unique place of global significance, the so-called roof of the world. It was great coming here and seeing with our own eyes that overall the situation is quite good. It is better to see one time than hear 1,000 times. This opportunity exists not only thanks to our company, but also thanks to our government and personally to our president. They are doing so much to help us and preserve our flora and fauna. Guys, I hope you liked what you saw. I'm so glad you came. A lot is done to preserve nature not only in the western Pamir, but all over Tajikistan. The situation is indeed quite good and favorable. Thank you very much for taking the time to come here and sharing it with your audience.